In this demo, we will show you how to use some new pieces of hardware, a 555 timer and a decade counter, to make a spinning roulette wheel of LED lights. First, let's talk about the 555 timer. This is a very common chip, probably the most popular integrated circuit ever made. It's used for basic timing functions. In this video, we're going to use it as a type of clock, but it has many other uses as well. In the description of this video, you'll find a website that describes each individual pin better than I ever could. For our uses, we will be putting the 555 timer in astable multi-vibrator mode. This means that the chip will produce a repeating rectangular wave function. This means it oscillates between a high and low voltage at a set time interval, like a clock does inside of a processor. It's even self-triggering, meaning the rectangular wave will be produced from the instant the circuit is powered. Next, we're going to feed this rectangular wave function into the clock pin of the decade counter. The decade counter is another commonly used component. It's used to count up to the number 10. The chip works by sending a high signal to the pin that corresponds to the number that it is counted to. When first powered, the chip will be sending high to the pin corresponding to the number 0. But every time the current in the clock pin changes from high to low or from low to high, the decade counter counts up by 1. We'll use this in our prototype to send the signals to the LEDs. So, to summarize, the skills you'll need to understand to make this device are circuit diagrams, resistors, LEDs, capacitors, 555 timers, and decade counters. The materials you'll need are a 555 timer, a decade counter, 3 resistors, 1 capacitor, 8 LEDs, a 5-volt battery, jumper wires, and a proto board. Now let's go over the circuit diagram. The main components of this circuit are the 8 LEDs set up in a ring, the decade counter, and the 555 timer. You'll first want to make sure that the decade counter and the 555 timer are connected to power and ground. You'll also want to connect all of the LEDs to ground. Next, we're going to build the astable multi-vibrator circuit, shown here. Then we connect the 555 timer to the clock pin of the decade counter. Finally, we need to connect all 8 LEDs to their corresponding pins on the decade timer. Starting from the top of the circle of the LEDs, connect the LED to pin 0, and moving clockwise, connect the next one to pin 1, the next one to pin 2, and so on. After connecting everything together, you should have a completed prototype. Some additions you can make to this prototype is adding a potentiometer to the circuit to adjust the rate of the LED spinning. You can increase the clock rate by adjusting the resistance of the resistors in the astable multi-vibrator circuit.